What is going on, my broskiis? My name is Toadski, back again, here to bring you guys yet another One Piece Treasure Cruise video. Finally giving you guys a video for a showcase for the brand new versus Zoro Legend. And of course, we will have a separate dedicated video for Rob Lucci. And I mean, that's a really cool thing with these versus units in general. You know, you pull one character and you essentially get two characters in one, which is really dope. And I mean, considering with the new introduction of the Rumble limit break functionality with 15.2, versus units are going to be the prime candidates for Rumble limit break, because you are essentially buffing two units in one. However, you know, we're not really going to be talking about Rumble specifically in this video. I do want to bring you guys dedicated videos for them in Rumble, because there's definitely some conflicting opinions in the community. It feels like with these characters in Rumble, I've got my own opinions, but I'll save that for the video. But this video is fully dedicated to what they're doing in normal content. So Zoro, being focused on slashes, free spirit characters, and also int characters with the captain ability. He also gives you the ability of -3 turns to all switch effect and -6 to all versus gauge at the start of the quest. Now, while this is actually really good for Zoro himself, the other thing that immediately caught my mind when I read this was this is going to be really interesting to use with a character such as versus Shanks. So versus Shanks has a very similar kind of ability with Zoro, you know, a really high gauge versus gauge, and very, very frustrating to get that to work because it's based on like the amount of turns that have passed or consuming certain types of slots. So Zoro can just give you 6 at the start of the quest and generating a full board of tandem slots at the start of the quest. That enables both Zoro and Shanks to generate their versus effect way quicker than it was previously. Especially if you're running double Zoro, being able to get -6 is pretty fantastic. So you could often use that strategy, and then if you wanted to switch your captain out, having a captain shift mechanic, something along those lines, I think will be kind of interesting moving forward into the future, because while Zoro has that ability to just allow versus and switch effects to just occur more frequently or more faster, the thing is I don't really like his captain ability a ton. I mean, in terms of damage, that's not really a major issue. I mean, a lot of captains that release these days can do plenty of damage, but the utility component is not that crazy in my opinion. He does have the ability to just remove 2 turns of increased defense whenever you activate a special that removes increased defense, which could have some really niche uses, right? Like, let's say you have a rare recruit that can remove 5 turns of increased defense, meaning that with Zoro Captain it becomes a 7-turn removal. Like that actually could be kind of cool. You know, if you're running double Zoro, and then you could have a character that removes 3 turns of defense and then it immediately becomes 7 turns. So again, in very niche circumstances, yes, that's going to be really, really cool to have. But I think generally speaking, there's definitely better captains I would rather use, just for more ease of use for getting through content, because there's not really much else going on. He doesn't even really give cooldown to your characters in the captain ability either. So I do like the fact that he gives switch and versus gauge cooldown. That's nice, but not giving special cooldown means you still have to stall for specials anyway if you're going up against content where you don't receive cooldown at the start of the quest, which I guess is few and far between these days, but you know what I mean. Moving on from that, one of the other really key components, not really showcased in this video, but one of the things that is going to see a lot of play with the Zoro and even Lucci moving forward is that their crewmate abilities are absolutely busted. So Zoro has a really interesting crewmate ability which just states that whenever the enemy puts up damage threshold, removes 6 turns of it. Of course, it does only activate the first time it occurs, and it does only activate when he is a crewmate, but just getting free threshold removal as a sub is phenomenal. You don't even have to do anything. You don't have to activate a special, no switch effect, no versus gauge, no nothing. It just will immediately activate, which is just absolutely insane. He does also give you the full board of tandem slots at the start of the quest when you use him as a crewmate as well. So again, just further adding even more usability to using him as a sub as well. And then the special is really good too, because it is an effect that you can pretty much put on any team and it's going to help you out, because it's not based on types or classes or anything like that. The only real condition attached to his special is that you want to have either 3 or more Straw Hats or 5 or more Egghead characters in order to receive the attack down removal and the chain boundary effect. So more often than not, you probably want that to occur, because the attack down removal by 7 turns is really good to have. But also you get that really big chain boundary, 3.0 to 35. It is only for one turn, which I guess is a bit of an issue that I have with more modern characters that do release, because yeah, even though like, you know, this multiplier of a chain boundary is not like the most broken effect in the game, but it's not a really high number either. So I would have preferred it if it at least was for 2 turns, because, you know, if you have to take multiple turns to get through a fight, or if the enemy has an intimidate effect, which we know is becoming more and more common as time moves on. Having a way to kind of avoid intimidate by having a buff that lasts longer than normal is definitely going to be nice to have. I wouldn't really expect it to be a 3-turn buff. I mean, hey, I wouldn't say no to it. But I do think that at least being a 2-turn buff to allow you to get through multiple turns on one boss, or for intimidate purposes, honestly. As for the other things that he does do 2 million fixed damage that goes through everything, including normal attacks only, which is lovely. He also removes 7 turns of increased defense, which we know as a captain, it actually becomes 9 turns of increased defense. Double captain becomes 11 turns. And then his special will also reduce versus gauge of all characters by 4. Again, further adding to the really nice synergy between versus Zoro and versus Shanks. So I think this combo is going to be really nice moving forward. However, you do still need to fulfill the fact that you need 3 or more Straw Hats on the crew in order for Zoro to get the most out of his effects. And for versus Shanks to get his abilities, you really want a full team of slashers. So that could be kind of tricky to do, because there aren't that many good characters that are Slasher and Straw Hat that are not Zoro. The only real character you could really use is like Brook, for example. And there isn't really a ton of good Brook characters. So that, I think, could be the only issue moving forward. But you could also just use 5 or more Egghead arc characters, which the Kid and Shanks versus unit is also an Egghead character. So you could go down that route. So that's kind of neat at least. And then, of course, the other effect in his special, 2.25 times increased damage taken through immunity. You love to see that. Partnering that with the Versus special, which can enhance your increased damage taken buff on the enemy by 0.5. So if you have double Zoro, that can actually become a 3.25 times increased damage taken against the opponent, which is, I think, at this current stage, the highest increased damage taken you can inflict to the enemy. I know that the Strength Luffy that came out at last New Year's can give you a 3 times increased damage taken. Of course, you know, you're not going to get 3.25 times increased damage taken with a single Zoro, but with double Zoro, that is actually achievable. The Versus effect of Zoro can also remove 5 turns of paralysis, which is just nice to have a bit of utility there. As well as the increased damage taken buff, he also can give you a 30% final tap bonus to Slasher and Free Spirit characters. So that's not really going to be great for Zoro moving forward. He himself does have Rush, but it is a first tap Rush, so he doesn't really get full use of abusing that effect. So unless if they come up with another character moving forward that can abuse a really OP final tap, this is just going to be kind of like a whatever kind of ability. What we could see moving forward is that this may be the start of like a new Egghead Straw Hat focused team, and potentially we get something during the New Year's celebration where this Zoro will synergize perfectly with a new unit that will come out. I mean, that's a long shot, but I wouldn't be shocked if something like that would to come out in the future. So there we go. That's the breakdown of Zoro. I think overall, Zoro is a pretty interesting unit, and I feel like the best case for him is going to be using him as a captain and then switching him out, you know, once you get towards the burst turn, just to abuse like the cooldown effects. Still using him as a sub is going to be a really nice thing to use on a ton of different teams. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video today. If you did, make sure to go ahead and leave a like. And if you want to stay up to date with all the content I post, including more One Piece Treasure Cruise content, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. On that, guys, I'll see you guys within the next video.
Too.